Welcome back to DreamHack Winter 2018. It's time to get into round number 7 of the Swiss. And after this round, the first players will have officially qualified for our top 16. Joining me for this round will be a man who clearly doesn't read his Discord messages.
What?
Falcone. Dude, so we did the sweaters in the first round.
We were wearing jumpers today.
It was like a bit, but like we did it as like a bit, but you weren't here. So, like, why are you still wearing it?
I like it.
I mean, I get it, except we all changed now, so you just kind of stand out. You just kind of look silly. Like, do you have another shirt?
Yeah, I'll go change.
Like, can you go change? Hey, camera, on me. Okay, well, he's gonna go change because I thought we were doing like a Christmas picture thing, but, you know, we gotta be inclusive here. It's the holidays and, you know, so clearly he didn't get my Discord message telling him that we weren't actually doing a Christmas picture. So apologies for that, guys. Falc, that one's on him. Yeah, I tried to tell him. Not much we can do. Is that Rudolph?
You can't take away my Christmas spirit today, Cora.
Oh, God. Okay, well, legally, he has to wear clothes, so I guess we can't do much about this,
Should we talk about some Hearthstone?
Let's talk about some Hearthstone. I think that's a good idea, Falc. Let's default back to Hearthstone. So it's round number 7. After this, the first players who are 7-0 will be moving on to the top 16. Of course, this is where we start to see some players make the cut, and in the next couple of rounds, unfortunately, some players are going to fall a little bit short.
Yeah, we're looking at some 5-1s coming into the next game, which is, it's quite exciting. We're getting to that point. It's towards the end of the Swiss. I like to say every game counts at this point. Every game counts all the way through the Swiss, just ask Lorinda and his stats. But now we're really getting to the point where if the players start to lose, they're going to lose that chance that they very much still have at the moment.
And coming up, we've got a match between two players who are relative unknowns in the scene. It's Hypno taking on Paeramore. Both of these players at 5-1 match record, meaning that the winner of this goes to 6-1, not yet qualified technically for the top 16, but looking very, very good, just needs to win one of the next 2 series. Hypno finished top 4 at HCT Oslo and competed in the HCT Germany qualifiers. I believe finished top 12 there, so not crazy results, but he does have some tour stop experience. Paeramore, I could not find any information on. I'm assuming this isn't Haley Williams. Paeramore, it's like a different person. And unfortunately, I've just not seen Paeramore play before.
Hypno is a player that I've quietly been quite a big fan of, though. I believe he is one of the pioneers of Even Paladin in this meta, at least. Playing it to some success in tour stops, playing it for his team in the Hearthstone Global Games, building it for his team in the Hearthstone Global Games, and getting some real good victories with it. I mean, that was when I first noticed him and noticed the deck. And ever since then, I've had my eye on him, and yeah, he's just a very exciting player for me, at least.
Does he have the Even Paladin today?
He does, in fact, have the Even Paladin today. Even Paladin's been very popular over the course of this tournament, though. I don't know what it is. It's just found its place, I guess, in this meta.
It's a deck that a lot of people feel very confident with. It's quite consistent. It does have explosive burst damage if you're able to get that Corpse Taker down early, follow it up with a Blessing of Kings or a Spike Ridge Steed. And historically, it performs very well against Druid. Druid being very prevalent right now, that's definitely a big reason why you would want to bring Even Paladin to a last hero standing tournament. Odd Paladin, however, has been performing really well also, so it's kind of a toss-up, I guess. Depending on what other decks you'd like to bring, can decide which Paladin deck you'd like to bring if you want to bring Paladin in your lineup, which a lot of players have elected to bring Paladin in their lineup. We've got Boar Control with an Odd Paladin, I believe. Or no, Gallon with Odd Paladin, excuse me, with King Mukla, who 3-0'd Casey yesterday, doing very well with that.
Loves his Mukla, doesn't he? Likes his big monkeys.
He sure does.
I know
we've seen in that interview a couple times.
I know that you're not the biggest fan of Even Paladin yourself, Cora, but for me, it's sort of one of the most innovative decks that we've had recently during the meta. We're at this time where the next expansion's just about to come out, and the meta has this risk of being very dry, very stale. But in this tournament, we've been very lucky. We've had Even Paladins, we've had a few of the priests, which the Cloning Gallery priests, which I know aren't strictly that new, but they're still somewhat new. We've also had Dead Man's Hand Warrior, which, although we like to meme about that deck, how annoyed we are, how it extends the day, etc., I'm quite excited about the fact that it's just here doing well at DreamHack Winter.
It is doing really, really well. Zenananan defeated Janos in the last series, partially because he was able to win Dead Man's Hand Warrior against Togwaggle Druid.
I don't even want to know how... Well, I do want to know how that game went. I can't imagine how that game went.
TLDR. would be great, because I didn't watch it. It was happening off stream. But I imagine that was quite a long series. There's been a lot of cool innovation in the meta in the last couple of months, and I know a lot of players who, even though things are a little bit stale, we want something new, something exciting, will be really sad that this meta is going, because a lot of players actually have very good results in this meta. It's very consistent, it's very diverse, and that plays into a lot of our best competitive players' strengths.
It's a very diverse meta. It's a very old meta now, I think it's fair to say, given that really the meta that we've ended up with, a month or two into the Boomsday is very similar to the meta that we ended up with at the end of Witchwood. However, towards the end of Witchwood, players were saying this is the best meta we've ever had. So it's sort of a blessing and a curse, isn't it? It's the same meta for a long time, but it has been a very good, a very diverse meta.
Yes, in a vacuum, the meta has been quite diverse, quite good for tournament play in particular. On ladder, things were a little bit of a different story, I would have to say. If you're playing Druidstone, you don't really like that so much. But in tournaments in particular, where there is forced diversity, it's been really, really awesome. But we can go ahead and take a look at the bans now for Hypno versus Paeramore. Falk, you want to run me through just what they've brought to the table here? Yeah,
sure. For Hypno, we have Even Paladin, Token Druid, Death Battle Hunter, and Even Warlock. And for Paeramore, we have Quest Rogue, Death Battle Hunter, Token Druid, and Even Paladin. So similar-ish lineups on both sides. We see the Even Paladin banned away on both sides there, leaving both players with Token Druid, both players with Death Battle Hunter, Hypno with the Even Warlock, Paeramore with the Quest Rogue. Now that is quite a difference, and we've seen Quest Rogue dominating already today, so leaving that thing up, although it's not quite what it used to be, that's still a scary move.
Quest Rogue did a number in a couple of matches in our last round on stream, even reverse sweeping in one of the matches, getting some solid wins in our third match on stream. It's a deck that after the Giggling Inventor nerfs, and, well, even further back, after the Crystal Core was nerfed the first time, players really dropped this deck quite quickly, went to something else, and then a little bit down the road, picked it back up and realized maybe we quit on this a little bit too fast.
And they're back. And Quest Rogue's back again. Yay, everyone! Yeah. Quest Rogue's back again.
It's still just really good. And being in a last hero standing format, there are some lineups that have brought quite aggressive strategies, but there's very little odd rogue. So Quest Rogue, if it's going up against a deck or against a lineup that, say, has Hunter, Druid, Even Paladin, maybe Shutterwalk Shaman, is really well positioned.
It's a good medical. There's not many Murloc mages, and obviously Tempo Mage doesn't exist anymore. Tempo Mage was the biggest counter to Quest Rogue before the Giggling Inventor nerf. Like, that's worth pointing out. So the fact that there's no aggressive mage decks now, or very few aggressive mage decks in this tournament, just goes to show how bringing Quest Rogue could reward a player.
Now, even Murloc Mage isn't running Mana Worm, so Quest Rogue relatively unscathed across the field. But now we want to know from you, who do you think is going to be winning this series? Make sure you're following the channel, and in the chat, hashtag Hypno or hashtag Paeramore. Make sure you get that E in there for Paeramore. I did not know his name was spelled like that.
Paeramore.
Paeramore. Falk, do you have a preference here?
Do I have a preference? So Even Paladin has been banned away on both sides. Like I said, I've been a fan of Hypno because of Even Paladin for a really long time. So I almost wonder if it was a respect ban from Paeramore, the Even Paladin, or whether him banning Paeramore's Even Paladin was a respect ban because he just respects the deck so much.
It's possible.
I think I'm still going to have to say I think Hypno is the favorite here. He is the better known player. He's the one that I've known for quite a while. It would be insincere for me to say that I think Paeramore is favored.
I am going to have to go with Hypno here as well, just because he's the one who has the results, has the experience that we know of at the very least. But, as always, I would love to be pleasantly surprised by what I see here from Paeramore. Tough to know going in, however, without much background on these players, so I am going to give my vote to Hypno as well. But now, we gotta know, do you agree with us? Do you think that Hypno is going to be taking the win here, or will it be Paeramore? Who voted for whom?
Drum roll, please.
Nope.
No?
Nope. We're almost there. No. And here we go. Okay. Yeah. Well, I can't drum. I was never a percussionist. My rhythm's terrible.
Now I feel mean again.
I'm guessing a lot of people spelled Paeramore wrong. No shame. I did it too. But Hypno, overwhelmingly, 80% of the votes going over to Hypno. He's the player with the more experience. He's the player with the easier to spell name. And I think that does give him a decisive advantage.
Did you see that over time? Like the votes were shifting. Paeramore was getting more of them.
Okay.
I don't know. Again, Hypno, he's done well at tour stops. He represented the, I believe, Switzerland Hearthstone Global Games team this year. He's been doing very well for himself, and I think it would be great to see him have a successful run at a tour stop and maybe even win DreamHack Winter. I'm excited for this game.
Well, he's a player that I'm certainly excited for the audience to get a chance to see, because Switzerland does not have the biggest Hearthstone scene. They didn't go very far in the Hearthstone Global Games. So for Hypno to have a chance to get on a stage again, it's going to be pretty sweet. But game number 1, Hypno, is he playing a...
It's token. It's token on both sides.
Oh, okay. Token mirror. Interesting. We haven't had all that much token so far this tournament. A couple here and there, but they haven't been doing too well.
Token mirrors, though, are one of the strangest matchups in Hearthstone. We've started with typical Druidstone, right? Both players have got Wild Growth. Hypno has 2 Wild Growths. Paeramore has Wild Growth and Nourish. That's the start that they want. But this matchup gets complicated because Whispering Woods and then Soul of the Forest, great, you get a board full of 1/1s. But then your opponent plays Spreading Plague, and then, oh dear, they've got a board full of 1/5s that you just can't kill. It's very tricky to maneuver this one. When this deck sort of first started to exist in the meta, I think one of the strategies that players just did was they just passed every turn and they just let it go to fatigue. It's a weird one.
Quite literally at DreamHack Austin, I believe it was Zalay and Amnesiac.
Yes, yeah, that's it. That's the game I'm talking about.
They did not know how to operate in the mirror. The deck was still relatively new at that point. And so they just never played anything. They willingly allowed themselves to fatigue. They went in and milled something like 10 of their own cards. It was just the weirdest Hearthstone match I've ever seen. And we certainly have a lot more information on the way that these decks operate now. Spent a lot more time with them in the meta. But even still, I hate this matchup. I don't know how to play it. I'm going to hope these guys do. It's hard to know when to commit to the board.
I think it was Sottle that said in a cast a little while back, if a game is going to fatigue and both players are doing nothing, one of the players is wrong.
The way that I like to see this matchup played a lot of the time is kind of very aggressively. If you can Whispering Woods before your opponent, even if you haven't seen a swipe, the chance that they don't have swipe, assuming you have a Soul of the Forest to follow up that Whispering Woods, only 2 swipes in the deck. They don't have it. You get that Soul of the Forest down, suddenly you can win the game very, very quickly. So I think Hypno has that opportunity right now to throw this Whispering Woods onto the board, follow it up potentially with that Soul of the Forest, and maybe even just win the game on the back of this very early play that, yes, gets incredibly punished by Spreading Plague and Swipe, but could just win in the game if Paeramore doesn't have him.
It's true. That is true. Does he get enough Wisps from this, though? It only get 5.
It's not a lot.
It's not a lot. And there's already a 4/4 on the board, then a Hero Power deals with another one, a Spellstone deals with a third maybe. Even if there's no Spreading Plague, that's kind of risky. I do have a couple fun facts for you about this game of Hearthstone.
Please give them to me.
Fun fact number 1, both of these deck lists are exactly the same card for card.
Violet Teacher build, I'm assuming?
Yep.
Okay.
Fun fact number 2, they both run a copy of Cenarius.
I like the Cenarius at the top end.
It's been more popular recently than it has been in the past. Yeah,
This'll be good.
bit of a surprise.
Kind of operates as a very expensive strong shell scavenger when you have a board of Scarabs up.
Yeah.
But also just the ability to have that one final buff, to have a minion that by itself is somewhat threatening, even though it is very expensive. It's a really flexible buff tool.
I think back at DreamHack Summer, there were 1 or 2 players that brought Cenarius, and they were saying, yeah, it improves the mirror. And I remember saying to them, oh, sure, how do you play it in the mirror? And they said, I don't know. We don't know how it works in the mirror, but we know it improves the mirror.
It's kind of an instinctual thing. You'll know when you know. But now that Hypno has found that Ultimate Infestation after drawing off branching paths, obviously he didn't need to draw anymore. And he's just going to be able to fire that off on turn 10 and find pretty much all the resources he needs to drive him for the rest of the game. Paeramore, after that Wild Growth Nourish, doesn't have a UI just yet. Hand's a little bit lackluster at this point. The more cards, the better in this matchup, because you need the ability to not only pressure, but to respond to everything that your opponent does. And very quickly, the second a board is left uncontested, you die.
True, especially the further into the game that we get, because the further into the game that we get, the more dead cards the players are going to have in terms of the branching paths, the Savage Draw that they just can't do anything with, and you get to this critical mass where at any given moment you could be dead if you leave this board up, as you were saying.
So now Paeramore on 9 mana has the ability to go Whispering Woods, Soul of the Forest in the same turn. And because he doesn't have an Ultimate Infestation or a Nourish in hand to draw cards, looks like he just needs to be the aggressor at this point.
He's not even going to play the Soul of the Forest here. Wow.
I maybe would have liked to see him go with the Power of the Wild there just to really insulate against a swipe. But I suppose if Hypno's playing swipe, then Paeramore could just go for the second Whispering Woods and then go Soul of the Forest and Power of the Wild in the same turn.
I mean, I guess if he's swiping it, then he's not playing Spreading Plague. Maybe that's the thing here. I don't know.
I suppose.
Come next turn, Swipe and Spreading Plague could be played together. A Spreading Plague into a swipe would be a disaster.
Importantly for Paeramore, Spreading Plague and Soul of the Forest cannot be played together just yet. It's only turn 9. But this is somewhat of an embarrassment of riches for Hypno. Even Malfurion is a great draw. Maybe not right now. I think Spreading Plague is a little bit too tempting right here. But that's going to be really great going forward.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, one player has Ultimate Infestation and the other player doesn't. So yeah, that is an embarrassment of riches for Hypno. He just needs to work out the best way of emptying his hand enough to play that Ultimate Infestation. Looks like he is going to go with Malfurion here. Deal with one of those wisps. He knows that he's definitely not dead right now. Paeramore just hit 10 mana. There's no way that this is lethal. He can't do 40 damage through the 2 taunts.
No.
I think at the very most he could do 28.
I like that Hypno's taking this kind of slow. Spreading Plague is a really valuable tool. If Hypno can get through the first Whispering Woods without having to use this plague, especially since he doesn't have a second one in hand, it's always good to reserve those resources until you have, no other option, or it's just clearly the best option.
I'm a teacher. I'm just really curious as to where he's going with this.
This is going to be a Power of the Wilds, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Okay.
No? I honestly thought it was as well. But I guess at this point, he's established, okay, there's no swipe in my opponent's hand. The most likely play is Ultimate Infestation. Let's just make Ultimate Infestation as awkward as possible for Hypno. You could argue Power of the Wild would have done the same thing by buffing the Violet Teacher out of Ultimate Infestation range.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking there. This Teacher is a really fabulous engine since Paeramore hasn't gotten the most value out of his first Whispering Woods. He just didn't have the buff cards to back up that first Whispering Woods, but also didn't have anything else to do other than play it at the time. So the Power of the Wild would allow the Teacher to potentially survive, and that could be like a pseudo third Whispering Woods, which Paeramore needs all of the value he can get right now. Doesn't have Ultimate Infestation, doesn't have Nourish. I think letting go of the Violet Teacher is a little bit liberal. It's a bit of a liberal use of his resources.
Well, this is what I was saying at the start of this game, is that you can't play this matchup as you would play another matchup where you just spew as many 1/1s on the board and then just kill your opponent with them at some point, because this happens. And these Scarabs, it's just impossible for Paeramore to get through all of this.
Well, here's the thing. He doesn't have to. He can just respond with his own Spreading Plague, Soul of the Forest. The issue being the Violet Teacher will spawn
a 1/1 first.
An apprentice before the Scarabs actually summon. So Paeramore will get 5 Scarabs here. Everything will Death Rattle into a Treant. And he does have Ultimate Infestation now. But this is the point of the game where Hypno is still in the driver's seat because he was able to launch Spreading Plague first. So Paeramore may be too far behind going forward to even use that Ultimate Infestation. He might be forced to buff and trade. But this is just kind of the way that this mirror goes. It's really difficult to navigate it absolutely correctly, because you have to decide, when can I afford to play around Spreading Plague? When is it just not worth it? Paeramore obviously just thought, it's not worth it. He can't beat it. Things are still not decided just yet, but Hypno has more resources at this point.
It is one of the more confusing matchups in Hearthstone. This isn't the kind of game where you'd want to be playing with a friend who's never played Hearthstone before. Oh, let me show you what Hearthstone is. Take a look at this board. They just blink twice and walk away.
See, that's why they start you off on basic Mage. Because Fireball is cool.
I mean, this is cool.
Spreading Plague.
There's just a lot going on.
You could describe Spreading Plague in a number of ways. Cool, I'm not sure is one of them.
Death is eternal.
Favorite thing to do now when taking a photo with people is say, everybody say spreading plague.
Everybody just goes, oh.
Makes for a great photo.
All right, so ultimate infestation from Hypno. He just needs more stuff. He wants to have more options. There was nothing that he could... There's nothing better that he could really do this turn. And you might as well force Paeramore to make the trades, I suppose.
I mean, nobody really wants to do anything. That's the problem with this matchup. They're just sitting there with 1-5 Scarabs on both sides.
Somebody has to take charge. You got to do something here. Paeramore can't actually trade off any minions, so that Tyrant's not going to come down this turn. Hypno, similarly, going to burn a card because he couldn't drop the Tyrant because his board was full.
Cards like Branching Paths and Power of the Wild and Cenarius are actually very key in this type of situation, because anything that permanently buffs this board, lets you make those valuable trades, they are the cards that are going to win you the game. Paeramore has picked up Cenarius now. He can even Cenarius innovate Power of the Wild on one turn, and that could be game-changing.
You're absolutely right. These Scarabs, once they're on the board, temporarily buffing them, yes, it's good, but when you have this kind of Scarab war, you need these permanent attack buffs. They've got good enough health. Start making them actually do something here. Hypno only has a Savage Roar in hand. He's got that Power of the Wild as well.
He just burned the second one, which is a problem. I'm a little bit surprised Paeramore didn't just trade one of those 2/2 Treants into one of the 1/5s, so that next turn he can then trade it off to make space for Cenarius. I wonder what he's thinking there.
I think he's assuming that Hypno is going to have to start making trades this turn.
Right.
So he was expecting buffs post-Ultimate Infestation, and then for his Scarabs and some of his Treants to die, which we can see is what's going to happen here.
Managed to maneuver the situation where some of these... he's not going to leave Paeramore with a full board. That's the main thing. He's not under any threat of an immediate lethal. If I remember rightly, Hypno already played one Branching Paths this game. He played one early on.
Yeah, he drew.
Which is a disadvantage for him later on. It's less burst damage in the long run.
So Hypno has the option to push face for 8 here with his leftmost 2 Scarabs.
He clears though, doesn't he?
Yeah, with 4 Scarabs up, you'd have to do the math exactly to see what range he's in at 41. With 6 minions on the board versus 4 minions on the board, with there still being 4 Scarabs to go through.
But the problem for Hypno here is he's used a Savage Roar. He's used a Branching Paths. He's burned a Power of the Wild. He's only actually got so many more ways of buffing his board. He's got 1 Cenarius left, 1 Power of the Wild, and 1 Savage Roar, 1 Branching Paths. Which, okay, that's quite a few cards.
It sounds like a lot to
actually,
me.
No, he used both Power of the World. Sorry, he just
he
used
played one and he burned one. But his deck is getting rather thin. He's already played Branching Paths for draw and an Ultimate Infestation. So the Nourish in hand, if he uses it for draw, is very likely to find at least one piece of buff here for him. And Paeramore is only sitting at 36. Sounds silly. Only 36 life, but he's absolutely within range of just a single buff spell from Hypno.
So he must be considering spellstoning away one of these Treants. Oh.
Rope's burning.
Okay, that was very quick, but it seems to sort of get the job done. In fact, this game's almost reset itself.
Violet Teacher Savage Roar innovates Spellstone. If Paeramore had traded off one of his minions, he could have had an extra apprentice on the board. It's just a little bit of an ordering issue there, but when the rope's burning down that fast, just get the major trades in, and then...
He had a lot to think about that turn.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that decision to go that route with the Violet Teacher was made at the last possible moment. He will have been thinking about the scenarios, like, what if I buff my board? What if I make the value trades? But that was a riskier play, because that would have left Hypno with a full board.
And that's the thing. In this matchup, if at any point you leave your opponent with an uncontested board, you are dead. And you have to assume every step of the way that you are dead.
Yeah.
But without a Spreading Plague, without wide AoE removal, there's only so much that you can really do to respond. Hypno's still got Whispering Wood, Soul of the Forest in hand. He's got second Spreading Plague now as well. Picks up the Branching Pads, leaving Savage Roar in the deck as the last buff card.
And Scenarios.
Yes, correct. So 21 damage here from Treants. At this point, Hypno is pushing so much damage to face, and this Teacher is threatening over 2 turns, but not immediately.
Oh.
So Hypno does not have to worry about clearing this up.
Paeramore needed to get the second Spreading Plague right now, really, and he needed to go Spreading Plague, Power of the Wild, Power of the Wild. I think that was potentially his only out here, as Hypno seemed to have somehow very cleverly maneuvered his way through that horrible wall of scarabs into this massively advantageous position. Even if this board gets cleared, he can then go Whispering Woods, Soul of the Forest. After that, he can play the second Whispering Woods.
Let's see.
He's looking really good here.
Mm-hmm. And how does Paeramore really respond to this? Savage Roar gives the hero 2 attacks, so you can clear up a Treant that way. Just build the biggest board in response as he possibly can, I suppose.
When you're a Token Druid and you're having to Savage Roar literally just to clear up a board with your hero power, that's not the position you want to be in.
So Paeramore goes down to 14. There is 15 damage represented. With the hero power, he is dead.
Dead on board, and there's a swipe in hand, and 2 swipes in hand, rather, and there's Scenarios. Hypno played that beautifully.
He was able to remain the aggressor for the duration of the game. Paeramore had to go a little bit wide early on because his hand didn't really offer him much else. He didn't have Ultimate Infestation at the point where he dropped the Whispering Woods early. But unfortunately, he didn't also have the backing for that early Whispering Woods other than a Soul of the Forest. So the Plague Soul of the Forest from Hypno on 10 mana was responded with a Plague Soul of the Forest by Paeramore, but he got only 5 Treants instead of Hypno's 7. So unfortunately, he just wasn't quite able to get over that wall of scarabs at any point.
And that is the moment it all went wrong. It was when Paeramore summoned a big board of 1/1s, allowing Hypno on turn 10 to do that. The Spreading Plague, Soul of the Forest. It's one of the most powerful plays you can do in Token Druid generally, but especially in that matchup, because it's so difficult for other Token Druids to deal with those cards.
But see, that's the issue of it. Somebody has to be the aggressor. Somebody has to initiate in that matchup. So how can you possibly know, is it supposed to be you? Am I supposed to put my Whispering Woods down and just hope that my opponent doesn't have Plague or Swipe, or should I be the one that's waiting? I don't know. It's a really, really difficult matchup to play, and I think that's honestly why we're seeing a lot of players not bringing Token Druid. Even though Token Druid's really, really powerful, it struggles against other Druids, and the mirror is just hard.
Yeah.
But Hypno is going to be playing as Token Druid yet again. Paeramore deciding to counter with Death Rattle Hunter, which I suppose is better than
Quest Rogue is his alternative.
It's just about the second worst deck that he could have available against Token Druid.
The Token Druid mirror is probably one of the hardest matchups that we've ever had in Hearthstone history. I think it's definitely up there. Paramore's lineup is not built to beat Token Druid, and this is going to be a tough one. He's got a good hand, though. Deathstalker Rexar is good against a board of Whispering Woods. He's got that Katharina that he can coin out on turn 7 if he wants to get out what are his big minions in here? He's got one High Mane, which is already in his hand, so King Crush or which would Grizzly. And Grizzly is fantastic in this matchup.
I do think that maybe Paeramore should have reconsidered his ban strategy a little bit. He banned away the Even Paladin from Hypno, and you were saying that Hypno is well regarded for his Even Paladin play.
Yep.
So I think maybe there was a bit of a respect ban there.
Yep.
But looking at Paramore's lineup with Quest Rogue, Token Druid, and Death Rattle Hunter, he, after his Paladin's been banned away, up against the Token Druid is very much relying on his own Druid to win that mirror. Mm-hmm. Now that he's lost that mirror, Quest Rogue and Death Rattle Hunter have horrible matchups against Token Druid. Maybe Quest Rogue gets there with some well-timed Phantom Knives and vanishes, but it's really difficult So had Paeramore elected to ban away the Druid instead of the Paladin, I don't think his Paladin matchups were that bad. Maybe something to think about. Hypno with Nourish for mana next turn into Ultimate Infestation. He even has the Arcane Tyrant to play down. He's going to be finding his Woods and Treant combos very fast. And there is no Unleash the Hounds in this Hunter deck.
What else can you say, Cora? Wild Growth, Nourish, Ultimate Infestation, 3 key cards all present there in the opening hand, ready to go. I've got to tell you, I don't know even Paladin matchups well enough to try and contradict Paramore's ban strategy, but everything you're saying makes sense. Like, Token Druid is good against his lineup.
I mean, even Paladin is probably decent against Token Druid because of Consecration and Wild Pyromancer just existing in the deck.
Pyromancer in particular,
that's pretty good, but the Hunter's decent against even Paladin. Quest Rogue's got to be okay against even Paladin. Even Paladin's a little bit slower if they don't find Corpse Taker Kings early on.
We saw a very close even Paladin Quest Rogue game earlier.
We did. We definitely did.
Closer than it
should have been.
Should have been.
Second Nourish off the top. He's going right into Ultimate Infestation on turn 5 of the game.
So, turn 5 mana, summon a 5/5, draw 5 cards, gain 5 armor. Yeah, I'd play that card in my deck if I wasn't a druid. If it actually cost 5.
Well, it costs 10, but just shave 5 turns off of the need to get there.
Just imagine, okay? Imagine right now you're Paeramore. Rustichan has been released, and on turn 5, coming up, you coin out the 6 mana, set both players' mana crystals to 5 card.
Ooh, Zihi.
Is that it? Zihi?
Yeah, it's some Mojo Master Zihi.
This would be the turn to play, right?
It would be.
That's it. You just shut down the druid. The druid has nothing to do over the next few turns.
Okay.
It literally passed for the next 3.
I'm buying it.
Don't rule that card out.
And then you
guys.
play Halazi the Lynx. You get a bunch of 1/1s. And then you complete your quest.
Sure.
Nah, we're not living in a Rustichan meta right now. We're living in a world where Druid can get to Ultimate Infestation before the Hunter even gets to turn 6.
Actually, we're living in a world where it doesn't seem to matter too much. Hypno got some Violet Teachers, but no Whispering Woods present in his hand.
No.
Paeramore, he can cube, play dead this high main, or coin out Katharina next turn. He's got a lot of options.
Yeah, that is incredibly sweet for Paeramore.
What to do?
I'm sure Hypno was really relying on that Ultimate Infestation to get him Whispering Woods so he could go Whispering Woods, Soul of the Forest this turn and simply end the game on the following turn with Path's Swipe and Power of the Wild. Now things are a little bit more difficult. Can Hypno go wide enough with Violet Teacher that he can win the game even through a Katharina or a Cube Playdead from Paeramore? Things suddenly look a lot harder without that Whispering Woods.
Yeah. So what are we looking at here? Violet Teacher, Spellstone, Power of the Wild? Violet Teacher, Power of the Wild? Doesn't quite have the same ring to it.
I don't like that. That's only a 4-minion board.
Pay attention,
But
class.
not much looks better.
Ow. Okay, sure.
Okay, so Hero Power, Power of the Wild. You don't want to leave the high main up because then the high main can just trade directly over the Violet Teacher. And also, if you leave the high main up, then Cube Playdead or Cube Coin Terror Scale Stalker is a reality. So I do like Hypno taking a bit of a defensive measure here and getting that high main off of the board, because now ultimately it means that without King Crush summoned off of Katharina, the Teacher lives.
It's done. This is 100% Wishwood Grizzly now, isn't it?
Yep.
I must admit, I was expecting Paeramore to consider Deathstalker Rexar that turn, just because it was such a clean way of dealing with the board. Trading in both minions as a Violet Teacher, Rexar does everything else. However, this is a better board.
Well, Paeramore knowing 100% after that King Crush draw that Grizzly gets pulled and still having Cube Playdead in hand
that's true,
to use on the Grizzly potentially next turn is insane.
Yeah.
Grizzlies are probably the best way for the Hunter to actually win this game in the later turns of the game. And then Deathstalker Rexar is always going to find a good turn to be played. If there's a board of Wisps and Paeramore has a board of his own, drop the Rexar, get rid of the Wisps, trade into the Treants, or actually in reverse order.
No, yeah.
You want a Rexar with Treants.
You're completely right, though. Like, playing Cube, play dead on a Witched Grizzly means you end up with at least 4 of them. They're all taunts with 12 health.
That's insane.
Like, yeah, okay, Hypno can end up with a big board. He can buff all of them. He only ends up with 8 attack minions, so it takes a lot of attacks to get through these 4 12 health taunts. It's, Paeramore's doing a great job this game. His hand has done him a lot of favors.
It has.
To be fair. But then Hypno's hand wasn't bad either. Again, Wild Growth, Nourish, Ultimate Infestation. The only card he's been missing is Whispering Woods.
I mean, Hypno's hand was insane. He had ramped 5 mana by turn 5 and was able to play Ultimate Infestation.
Yeah.
He just did not have that Whispering Woods follow-up. Had he had Woods Soul of the Forest, he wins the game. But now Paeramore does get to land the cube onto the Witchwood Grizzly. Play dead it immediately. And still with another play dead and 2 Terrascale Stalkers in the deck, he's very likely to find more Death Rattle activators for that cube.
It's just ridiculous. So two Witchwood Grizzlies from this, 2 when the cube dies, another one when Katharina dies, and then 2 more for each other Death Rattle activator that gets picked up in the meantime. This is insane. Hypno is just not going to be able to find the damage to get through this.
He doesn't have Silence in the deck. He can't even clear the 2 Grizzlies that are on the board currently. And still, no Whispering Woods available. He's got to be in the bottom half of his deck right now. But hey, when you draw that well in the opening hand, something's got to give sometimes.
What?
You don't always get what you need. And Paeramore really needed this win. This was a vital game for him. So the fact that he is looking like he's going to be able to take this one means that Hypno now has to attempt to counter the Hunter with his own Hunter with his Warlock. And it's an even Warlock, right?
That's right.
Okay. Hunter's slightly favored against even Warlock, I would say. And in the mirror, well, it's a mirror. So
and then after
50-50.
that, Hypno's going to have to deal with the Quest Rogue if he does take down this Hunter.
Yeah, and neither of his decks are particularly good against Quest Rogue. So
it was an important game, probably the most important game of the entire series.
Absolutely.
Oh, other than maybe the Token Druid Mirror. That's also... Okay, Hypno got a Whispering Woods, but he just milled... Did he just mill a Soul of the Forest and a Whispering Woods back to back?
Yeah, I believe he did. So he now only has one of the combo in hand. He was able to get through one of the Grizzlies, and more importantly, he's able to make his board everything below 5 attack, or everything below 6 attack, so 5 or less, meaning that the cube can't just trade into one of these minions and immediately proc 2 additional Grizzlies. Now, Paeramore can get one off the Katharina. We know that. But this is looking a lot more manageable for Hypno after that turn.
Abby, now is the Rexar turn. Look at that. Double Hunter's Mark. Rexar away everything and then just slam 13 damage into the face.
Yeah, Candle shot away the Violet Teacher even.
Oh.
Hypno did finally find a Whispering Woods, meaning that's likely to be his play for the next turn. Woods Treants. And again, hope that Paeramore doesn't have what he needs, but well, Hypno's just dead if he does that.
This is the problem with, or one of the problems with Token Druid in this matchup is that, or any Druid against Death Rattle Hunter actually, is that Spreading Plague doesn't really do that much. The board's never that wide.
Yeah, that's the reason why Hunter is actually a really solid choice against Togwaggle Druid and Malagos Druid, because the Hunter goes quite tall, and those other Druids really rely on Spreading Plague and Swipe to get them through to their win conditions. Well, those cards just simply aren't as effective against Hunter.
And then even if Spreading Plague does do its thing, the Hunter runs Mossy Horror. Just gets rid of it. The card on the left side in Paeramore's hand hasn't been played for such a long time. Hypno might expect that that's Mossy Horror. He might think that that King Crush is a Mossy Horror. And so he might be thinking, can I possibly survive this turn without having to rely on Spreading Plague? Because if I can, I should. But I don't think he can.
$14 damage in play right now. I don't think Plague is going to get him there. So if I'm Hypno, I'm going to go with Whispering Wood, Soul of the Forest, and hope that my opponent does not have the 2 damage necessary. He is going to quickly find out that Paeramore has that King Crush in hand. That's going to end the game. But I do think it's correct here to not play the Spreading Plague. The Plague does not win him the game. This maybe sometimes could.
Yep. I agree, but there you go. The Whispering Woods did not come early enough, but Paramore's hand came together very nicely indeed. So he's able to tie up the series 1-1.
Absolutely did. Cube Play Dead playing a big, big role in Paeramore getting that pivotal win, and now Hypno is forced to try to counter this Hunter from Paeramore, even Warlock or his own Death Rattle Hunter. One of them is a 50-50, one of them I think is ever so slightly favored towards the Hunter, but which of those decks does Hypno need more to beat the Rogue, I think is the question here.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he's going to be asking himself. And I really don't know the answer to that question. Giggling Inventor not being part of Quest Rogue anymore does make it a little bit worse against those very aggressive Death Rattle Hunter starts with eggs and play deads and things like that, and how Master Shores. So Hunter can beat Quest Rogue. Even Warlock also with Giants can just beat Quest Rogue.
I want to say that Hypno's going to queue up the mirror here. Because if he wins that, then he has an unfavored with the Hunter versus the Rogue, but Hunter can certainly still win. Then he's got the Warlock versus the Rogue, which I think is maybe a little bit better than the Hunter. Hunter's very susceptible to Vanish, and the Warlock's threats just come down a little bit earlier than the Hunter's. Maybe you get some attacks in before the Vanish is played. But you never really want to willingly go into a mirror. It's just a bad situation to be in. Hypno has no notable counters remaining for either of these decks that Paeramore has. That puts Paeramore in a pretty solid position, and only because he was able to get that win there with the Hunter versus the Druid.
It's funny how just a few moments ago we were saying, wow, none of Paramore's decks beat this token Druid, and then he did, and now he's looking like the favorite to win this whole series. Don't forget, these guys are 5-1 in the Swiss. A third loss is, I think, pretty much your hopes of top 16 gone. So they don't want to be in that position where they're having to play for their survival in the tournament. And I am noticing, Cora, a lot of the lineups that we're seeing, they're quite similar.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of even Paladin with success, a lot of Quest Rogue, a lot of Death Rattle Hunter and Druid. Well, I guess they're not that surprising, but a lot of even Warlock.
And something that Derek was saying earlier is a lot of players looked to the DreamHack Atlanta meta and then tried to exploit the weaknesses of that meta, assuming that players would bring the same decks that they brought to Atlanta. And it seems like the best players have all adapted accordingly and have changed their strategies, so there is very little weakness remaining that is similar to what was prevalent at DreamHack Atlanta, which is why we're seeing more Shutterwalk Shaman. Quest Rogue is a really good choice, and even Paladin when there was more even Shaman, more odd Paladin, and more odd Rogue at DreamHack Atlanta. But Hypno does go into the mirror like I thought was potentially his strategy here. If he wins this mirror, he has 2 chances against the Rogue, and even though both of those decks are not favored against the Rogue, 2 is better than 1. So he's still got a shot if he can win this. Gonna come down to early game with cubes and then late game with Kathrina. So Hypno's got the cube, Paeramore's got the Kathrina. But Hypno has the coin, so Paeramore isn't going to be getting to Kathrina before turn 8. It'll be a lot of this dependent on whether Hypno can find his Death Rattle activators, I think.
That's a heck of an early tracking, isn't it? Having to discard the King Crush because Play Dead is just so powerful in the early game. He didn't want to discard either of those cards. But now Paeramore desperately wants the egg, and Hypno desperately wants the egg activator. Very similar positions they find themselves in.
Neither of these guys with all the pieces to the puzzle just yet, but they're slowly but surely. They've got the corners.
I'll tell you, neither of the players drew Wild Growth this game, Cora.
Thank goodness. We would need to phone Blizzard and tell them something has gone horribly wrong. Okay, so no Terror Scale Stalker or Play Dead, but Hypno at the very least can Flanking Strike his egg next turn.
Wow.
Well, Paramore's just going to do it for him,
I was
actually.
going to do it for him. Okay.
That's fine.
It's a weird world of Hearthstone where your opponent actually does what you're about to do for you, using up their mana and using up their cards.
Well, Paeramore had to assume there that Hypno has Terrascale Stalker play dead on next turn. And if he does, Paeramore very likely just loses the game. So with the Flanking Strike, he sets up by hitting the Candle Shot into the Devilsaur to be able to kill that Devilsaur with the Wolf and the Candle Shot on the next turn. It's absolutely what he had to do.
Paeramore having to play very defensively. He has drawn Keleseth. If he can find the time to get that down, that's going to help him out quite a lot in the long run. But looking forward a couple turns, Paeramore has Katharina. His turn 8 is going to be the first big power play. He's already discarded King Crush, and he's already drawn 1 Grizzly. So I think that leaves him with one Jaime and 1 Grizzly left in the deck.
The early and mid game from Hypno has not been good enough that Katharina will not be impactful, essentially. Katharina is still going to be potentially game-winning for Paeramore here, especially with a double play dead to follow up on turn 9.
Well, he's only got a Grizzly and a Jaime left. But if he gets a cube, then the play dead will be
You're right,
huge.
he did track over the King Crush.
Yeah. Even so, like, maybe he'll consider playing the first play dead immediately on Katharina just to get out the immediate pressure. I don't know, like, there seems to be a game where the first player that actually does something, that actually gets some pressure out, that'll be the winner. Because they're just floundering at the moment. It's really strange to watch.
There's not a lot of pressure from either side. Some good utility. Houndmaster Shaw maybe making an appearance and making a splash in the next couple of turns for Hypno, but I just still don't know that that's going to be enough to beat Katharina. But that's a really very dead draw for Paeramore. I mean, he gets to take down the Grizzly and play around Cube plus Death Rattle Activator. That is quite good.
Don't forget, Paeramore played around play dead earlier by playing Flanking Strike on an egg immediately. So as far as Paeramore, my goodness, as far as Paeramore knows, Hypno's hand is full of Terrascales and Playdeads.
All right, so the ability to kill the Grizzly there actually was huge. Hunter's Mark was a fine draw. It doesn't develop for Paeramore, but that's fine because he's playing Katharina next turn anyways.
This is a much better tracking than Paramore's earlier. This one actually, the cards he's discarding just don't matter all that much. He discards an egg, big deal. It's cubes. The cubes are the big death battles now. He discards an ooze, okay, whatever. And he gets to play a high main. This works out very nice.
So the very important thing here is this high main sticks. And now Paeramore is absolutely going to play Katharina.
Does he get a high main or does he get a Grizzly?
Well, does Hypno have the cube is what I'm looking at here. If Hypno can top deck the cube, he's going to get 2 more Savannah high mains on the board, plus a cube with high mains in it.
True.
Oh, his own Katharina. Plus he has Coin Play Dead. Is that better than the cube? I don't think so, but it's
insane,
definitely...
though. Hypno's not playing it, though. He's going to go ahead, play the Spider Bomb, maybe play dead it, maybe play Houndmaster Shaw, trade it in as well, deal with both of these minions.
Well, because he can't at any point assume that Paeramore doesn't have a cube of his own.
If this bomb deals with the Grizzly, the high main can trade in, Shaw comes down, and the Spider Bomb deals with whichever beast gets summoned from it.
Yes,
so as we know, it's going to be a Savannah high main, which means there's still going to be something on the board for Paeramore.
Nope, these hyenas are going to go in. Spider Bomb trades in.
Ow.
Hyenas go over the hyenas with Rush. And now Hypno is left with just Houndmaster Shaw on the board.
Wow.
And now Paramore's hand, which was heavily relying on Katharina, is dead. He needs to find Devilsaur Egg off the top here or Deathstalker Rexar.
Oh, I mean, he could still go for it.
Ooze, Cube, play dead. Put some 3/3s on the board.
I say he could go for it. He has to go for it.
He has no other option.
I want to mention, Hypno has been holding on to that Houndmaster Shaw for a very long time. Usually you see that card slammed on turn 4, but he held it back, and held it back, and held it back, and look how much damage it did the turn it was played.
Where's he?
And how much damage it's going to continue to do as this Katharina summons out King Crush.
Paeramore down to 17. This would put him at just 9. Plus the 3 for the Shaw on board. I do think Hypno's going to want to trade up a little bit here, though.
I wonder.
I think so.
I mean, he could put Paeramore to 4 with a coin hero power this turn.
Also, Katharina has Rush, so that can just trade into a 3-3 without worrying too much about it. I think the question is, does this Hellmaster Shaw trade into the 3-3, or does it just go face? That's something that he's not going to be...
You're coining hero power every time to put Paeramore on the 2-turn hero power clock if he doesn't find Deathstalker, Rexar, or Ziliax. I think you push 3 to face. Hypno's at 24.
Yeah, there's no way Paramore's killing Hypno in the next couple turns, so that seems good to me. You're right, the only punish is Rexar or Ziliax.
Yeah, I want to see Hypno clock Paeramore here. And Paeramore still has to get through King Crush, the Katharina, and whatever comes out of the Katharina if he doesn't want to die. That's not happening here.
Do you want 1-5-5 or 2 3-3s? Which one do you want, Paeramore? Take your pick. He wants both. That's what he wants. He wants both and he wants to concede.
Masterful.
All right, Hypno taking game 3. His strategy working out well. He takes the mirror, and now he has 2 chances to beat the Quest Rogue. He's got his Hunter up first, and then the Even Warlock second.
Death Battle Hunter and Even Warlock versus Quest Rogue. I don't mind Hypno's chances here. Like, it's not a matchup. These aren't matchups that I think are super duper 90% favored for the Quest Rogue. They're not. They're more like, they're somewhere in the 60 to 70% range, if that. And 2 chances in a 40% matchup, that's not bad odds overall.
No, it's not. It's the best that Hypno could give himself by queuing up the Hunter first to hope for the win in the mirror. You know what? Still not good matchups, but 2 40% matchups means you have probably about a 50% chance. I'm not a statistician, so don't quote me on that. Dear God, please. All right, he needs to find Devilsaur Egg. Gotta find activators. Katharina is key in this matchup as well. And more than anything, Hypno is going to be hoping and praying that Paeramore doesn't have Vanish. Vanish is the one card that removes the tempo off the board completely. Any Devilsaurs that are on the board that were created for cheap now cost 5 when they go back to the hand.
Hellmaster Shaw is very good in this matchup as well, just as an extra tool to keep Paramore's stuff from sticking to the board. This is a really tough tracking for turn 1, and not much time to make the decision either. Which 2 cards do you want to discard here, Cora?
I do not know. Kel'Thuzad is not as impactful in Hunter as it is in Zoo, for instance. But it's still something to play on turn 2. It's pressure.
I think that was probably the deciding factor, actually. The fact that next turn is turn 2, this card can be played next turn. He drew a Spider Bomb now anyway, so discarding that wasn't the end of the world. And I think the problem with Cube in this matchup is that Vanish that you mentioned earlier. Vanish just destroys the Cube.
Yeah.
What doesn't? It vanishes it. It doesn't destroy the Cube. That's the problem.
Puts it right back in the hand. We can see Paeramore has Prep Vanish available, as well as Coin Elven Minstrel next turn. Doesn't quite know what he wants to bounce just yet, but things are looking really good. Even if Hypno manages to get some big stuff on board, that Glacial Shard is ready and potentially could be used as the quest completion target.
Oh, this is hard as well. He's already got a Terror Scale. Ooze can be good for destroying the dagger at some point in this game, especially after Valeera gets played, but I don't know if it's worth picking because of that.
No. I think the Ooze is probably the worst of these 3 options. He has a Terror Scale and a Playdead in hand, but how good is Flanking Strike, really? The issue is all 3 of these are just underwhelming.
Quickly.
Those are the Ooze.
Okay.
I mean, I do see the merit here. You're against a deck that does run deckhands, it runs Valeera. There can come a point in the game where the Ooze permanently dismantles the weapon and prevents these minions from having charge.
The issue is once it gets to that point, if Valeera the Hollow is in play, the Rogue is usually at that point just so far ahead that it's not really going to matter.
I mean, right now, if I'm Hypno, I'm wishing I took Flanking Strike and I'm wanting to use it immediately.
I would have probably gone with the Flanking Strike.
I think Terror Scale Stalker is probably the worst just because he has one. And like if he's going with a 3-drop to play on curve, then Ooze just makes more sense.
At that point, it makes sense to take a card that has utility that he doesn't already have access to, which would have been Gluttonous Ooze and Flanking Strike. But that's not the real issue here. The real issue is he hasn't had any sort of development. His first tracking was painful. Keleseth was probably the best choice on board right there, hoping that he would be able to find something like a Devilsaur Egg immediately after playing the Keleseth.
Right.
But instead, he just has all of this stuff that activates other stuff. He doesn't have the stuff that it activates yet.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, so Paeramore loosely committing to that Glacial Shard right now. This also helps to keep the Elven Minstrel alive, which is a nice bit of added bonus. Zola the Gorgon, after Valera the Hollow has been played, allows the Quest Rogue to go infinite with Zolas by Zolaing the Zola off of Death's Shadow every single turn. But Paeramore doing this is saying, we're not getting to that point.
No,
he doesn't need that much value.
I disagree. I think it's saying you can't deal with this Zola and this Shard right now, and I'm going to play Shard Vanish next turn, and you can't do anything about that, and then I'm going to complete the quest.
That's great, too.
Like, look at this. Hypno wasn't able to deal with anything because of the frozen face. Paeramore can
Shadow Step as well.
Oh, Shadow Step might change things. So I was thinking Shard, obviously, trade everything, hit everything in, whatever, and then prep out the Vanish, and then start playing more Shards to finish the quest as fast as possible. But Shadow Step is... Yeah, Paramore's got to stop and think about this.
I think the Vanish is still nice here.
He just hovered over them very quickly. It's like he's running it all through his head, saying, right, if I play these, then this happens, but then...
I think Paeramore wants to kill off the cube, or kill off the egg, excuse me, and then go for the prep Vanish. Devilsaurs are more expensive than the eggs.
Nice to meet you.
This is going to put him, with his quest, actually able to be completed on the following turn with the 2 Glacial Shards and the Shadow Step.
Using the Zola there was a little bit of a gamble, because if there was a flanking strike and Hypno did decide to use that on there, then sure, maybe that would mess him up in the long run. But this has paid off very nicely.
Holding back the Glacial Shard just in case there is a flanking strike, or Ziliax, I suppose, in hand for Hypno. You want to get the most minions down on the turn that you activate the Crystal Core as possible. But Paeramore did use the preparation last turn, so he's not going to be able to prep out the Crystal Core.
He's really close. he's 1 mana off, I think, because he can Shard, Shadow Step, Shard. And then...
Yeah. Needs 5. Only has 4 at that point.
Next turn, however, that quest is definitely going to be completed.
Next turn he goes Shard, Shadow Step, Shard. Plays the quest,
oh, this
can
is
even play...
This is slightly better because of what you said before, how Paeramore wants to play as many minions the turn he completes the quest. So this way it's not actually being destroyed. Next turn he can play both of them, complete the quest straight away, and they're 4/4s.
Yeah, this makes more sense. So he's actually going to be able to play 2 Shards and a Charger with the Crystal Core this turn. Getting down to 17. It's kind of scary territory. He hasn't found Vicious Scalehide just yet, but the Shards are going to stop all incoming damage for the next turn at the very least. We see there's still Zola and now Sonia's Shadow Dancer in hand as well. So it's very likely Paeramore is going to get more copies of these Shards. There's just some matchups that look easy for Rogue. This is one of them.
Well, I don't know if it always is. Hypno's start wasn't...
It was bad. It was very bad. But in any case, Paeramore would have had Prep Vanish.
That's the issue. It's less about what Hypno drew, because Hypno did have an egg, he did have an activator. It's less about what he drew and more about what Paeramore drew in this game.
The Death Rattle Hunter needs to draw very well, and the Rogue needs to draw badly, which is why it was so impressive when Just Saying completed a reverse sweep at DreamHack Montreal against Fino, with this being the first game that he won from the Death Rattle Hunter's perspective.
Right.
It was very unlikely.
Damage-wise, he's not far. Like, if there was a Katharina here, Katharina, play dead, get the King Crush, that goes face. Hypno's actually close, and the only healing Paeramore has is Ziliax.
The buffed Ziliax is really nice for Hypno, able to take a couple trades.
Quickly.
I wouldn't count Hypno out just yet. There are incredibly fringe things that could go right for him, although this turn is going to be disgusting.
This is just the Quest Rogue playground right now. They get to have all the fun in the world.
You think Sonya comes down this turn? Oh no, because he doesn't then have the mana to play the shards again.
You like my invention?
Wax Elemental's just fine. Or that,
Maybe there should have been some consideration to Sonya this turn
instead of the Zilliax.
and make some trades, but I suppose Paeramore had to think he is at 12 if he doesn't heal with Zilliax. And Zilliax is very likely to heal him for 8 instead of just 4, as it is out of flanking strike range. So is there any way that he dies from 12? Maybe he just didn't want to take that risk.
My pack will hunt you down.
No, I think I need to take back what I said last turn. I think Paeramore does have this game locked down. If he can just draw a vicious Scalehide, then suddenly things change dramatically for the better.
I mean, this is just trade off all the minions with South Sea Deckhand if he wants to be extra super safe.
It's not lethal, is it?
You're
It just is
sure?
lethal. Yeah, it's
with
just
the-
like the easiest lethal as
Yeah.
well. There you go.
Zola in hand as well.
Questro does it, and we were saying before, Hypno's chances aren't that bad. It's like 240% matchups. He should win one of them. Well, now, if we are calling even Warlock Questro a 40% matchup, then his chances to win are 40%.
I gotta check the stats
But
of Hunter versus Quest Rogue. That one just,
Yeah.
if a Vanish is ever there, it feels really, really
Maybe
bad.
you should just check the stats of Vanish versus Quest Rogue. Sorry, versus Hunter, and see.
It's just
See
a
what that
Vanish.
says.
Well, I'm sure the win rate for Vanish is very, very high. But now even Warlock is the final deck remaining for Hypno. We're going to game number 5. And this one will come down to early Mountain Giants particularly. Can Hypno connect to face? Before even Warlock had a hard time against Quest Rogue because of Giggling Inventor. Giggling Inventor would come down on turn 5. The Warlock would maybe be able to get through it with a Defile or get through it with a Hellfire, but oftentimes it would prevent just enough damage that with Glacial Shards and a quest completion shortly after, or a Vanish especially, the Rogue would be able to stabilize for long enough to just get to the end game. Warlock's got a little bit more time now.
It's got more time, and it's got, I think, arguably the more explosive start than the Death Rattle Hunter even. Mountain Giants on turn 3, for example. Like that begs for a Glacial Shard to come out. And if Paeramore doesn't have the Glacial Shard, then, well, the Giant just starts hitting the face for 8. So Hypno full mulliganing, I think, looking for that Mountain Giant.
It's going to have a couple of turns to tap to find it. The consistency of this even Warlock is the reason why you're seeing so many players bringing it to tournaments and why it's been the most popular Warlock deck over the last 4 months, I would have to say. There's a little bit of Q block splashed in, but being able to draw through so much of your deck before turn 3 and 4 just ups the consistency of dropping a Mountain Giant for 3 or 4 mana so significantly.
It's as simple as just being a deck where you can draw 2 cards every turn.
Here we go.
Which is a very basic way of putting it, but that's what it is. Like, the cost of actually drawing that second card, especially in the early game, very, very small. However, Hypno hasn't managed to find that Mountain Giant just yet, so he wasn't able to just slam that on turn 3. Coining out of Twilight Drake is the next best thing. It is going to start to push some serious damage, and it is going to start to beg Paeramore to have some answers.
It's going to be looking for Vanish. No Sap in this deck. No Vile Spine in this deck. No Vanish just yet.
It's amazing that the Zilliax makes it into the deck before Valspine
Okay.
does.
It's kind of a good point. The Zilliax takes the place of Giggling Inventor more obviously than the Vile Spine does, but they both exist to help buy the Rogue some time. But the Mountain Giant drawn off the top, Hypno will need to decide if he wants to tap and play the Giant here, or if he wants to just play the Giant. The reason there would be to play around prep Vanish, essentially, because the Vanish would put 2 minions back into the hand, and the tap would then cause the Mountain Giant to die, instead of being put back into the hand.
Also, he's been tapping to try and find Mountain Giant. He's found Mountain Giant. The urgency of tapping has been pretty significantly reduced. Ziliax is the answer, though, and it's not a great answer, as there's a Silence in hand, there's Hellfires in hand. Hypno can pretty much do whatever he wants and actually push 12 damage immediately. Double Hellfire, ready to be that burst damage later on. Things are starting to look very scary for Paeramore.
This is what I'm talking about.
She wants to find
Prep Mimic
Vanish.
Pod and hope for Vanish, but it's just not there this time for Paeramore.
And again, without Shard, which, as I said originally, is the key counter to the Mountain Giant, to the Twilight Drake. Without Shard, these Shadow Steps are useless. Doesn't even have a Minstrel or anything that he can use to dig.
When this rogue has Vanish or Glacial Shard against even Warlock, this matchup looks a hell of a lot different. But right now, this is incredibly one-sided.
Here we go.
Hellfire 15 damage here. Not quite lethal, but looking like Hypno's going to have it in 2 turns. Hypno can even Hellfire this turn to set up for the Hellfire lethal next turn, assuming that Paeramore finds the Vanish off the top. Because that is
true. Yeah.
the only thing that allows Paeramore to survive. Other than like Glacial Shard, Shadow Step, Glacial Shard, Shadow Step, Shard. And Hellfire plays around that too.
Yeah, no, he'd have to play Glacier Shard, Shadow Step, Glacier Shard, Shadow Step, Glacier Shard. Scale Hide, trade it into something to gain 1 health. Like, that would have to be the play, countering that. So I completely agree. Playing that first Hellfire now, setting up for the guaranteed lethal next turn. Looks like a very solid bet here. Hypno has found it. He's dealing the damage.
What could Paeramore possibly have here? It would need to be almost exactly Scale Hide, trade over a minion, prep Vanish to play around Hellfire.
Yep.
That is the only way he survives.
Well, he's got all of the Shadow Steps in the world, but all of the Shadow Steps in the world are not enough to save Paeramore here. Hypno, he won the first game, he then lost 2. He's managed to come back and take the series.
Paeramore did not struggle with putting his own minions back in the hand, but dealing with Hypno's minions, unfortunately, was something he could not accomplish this game. Questro looking mighty strong so far today, but going to come up a little bit short here for Paeramore in this Swiss showdown. So Hypno will take the win here. He's going to be moving on to a 6-1 record, meaning he just needs 1 more win to guarantee that spot in the top 16. Paeramore at 5-2. Going to have to win the next 2 in a row, but you know what? He's already won 5. There's no reason he can't win the next 2 and put himself in the top 16 alongside Hypno.
For sure. I'm not sure exactly how the tiebreakers interact with today's Swiss, like where exactly the cutoff point is. I expect it will be somewhere in the 2 losses. So some people will make it, some people won't. But hey, the players at this stage, they should have pretty good tiebreakers, I'd imagine.
We speculate that there will be a couple of 6-3s who make it simply because the player pool was smaller than DreamHack Atlanta.
Okay, that's good.
Like, for instance, DreamHack Montreal 2017 had a rather smaller player pool.
Right.
And I think we had about 4 or 5 6-3s there. So there was around 160 players, I think, at this event. Again, we're going to have to find out. It depends on how the records end up, how many 7-2s, 8-1s, and maybe even a 9-0 here or there. It doesn't happen every time, but the last couple of events we have had 1 or 2. So that is going to do it for our first match for this round. We are not done just yet, as I heard rumors of an Odd Warrior versus Togwaggle Druid match out on the floor, which means we are going to be bringing you another series here in the studio. Don't go anywhere. More of DreamHack Winter 2018 round number 7 coming up.